Blessed to be with you. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Coming up next, the House discusses reparations. And one person says it's the fault of the Democrats. But recently, California Governor Gavin Newsom, in an interview published earlier this week, said the Republican Party is headed for the waste bin of history. Joining us now from Republicans.org is their national spokesperson, Joseph Pineau. Joseph, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to speak to you.
Well, is it the end of the line for the Republicans?
Well, I mean, if you speak to some Democrats, apparently they think that this is the end of the era, that we're going to go the way of the dodo bird or the way of the dinosaurs at the end of the Jurassic, and this is all that we'll be talking about. So. No, I think that realistically, once again, you have Democrats, really in the end of the line for Republicans is greatly exaggerated. I think we have a bright and robust future. And I think, as you saw in 2016, with Hillary Clinton decided to call literally half of America deplorable, I think that really shows how out of touch many Democrats truly are.
Well, the governor of California is saying that the Republicans are going to go the way of the Republican Party. California Republicans, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that you'd be lying to yourself if you said that we didn't have some difficulties in these midterms. I mean, I think particularly if you looked at on the coast, you look in the Northeast coast here in New York where I'm based, you're looking at places like California. I mean, you look at what's the once thriving Orange County Republican Party in California no longer exists. And so there is truly some rebuilding that has to be done there. But I think at the end of the day, the notion that the party itself or the principles that we believe in somehow won't be able to last the test of time. I think, again, it goes to indicate the fact that you have, Democrats trying to take the country in a direction that's never gone in before. And so when you look at places like California, you look at places like New York City where I am, you have, New York City running for president. You've got, 23 other Democrats, running around the country promising to give America the parties in California, the policies that California and New York City have thrust upon their people that have led to runaway homelessness, that have led to rampant poverty. So again, I think that if you're trying to find an indication of what somebody will do for you tomorrow, the best thing to do is take a look at what happened in the past. If you look at what's happened in the past, since liberals have started to take over many of the larger coastal cities, it's been a disaster for the people that need help the most.
Well, here's something, though. You take a look at the AOCs, the Tlaibs, the Omars of the world. People say that America is growing more diverse, America is growing more younger, and the young people, they're not down with our kind.
Well, look, I think that there is evidence that, you have some millennials like myself who seem to, believe that, they can give everything to everybody for free. My grandfather told me at a young age that just because somebody doesn't send you the bill doesn't make it free. And so I think that, you're looking at the kind of the remnants of a generation that really hasn't lived through some of the atrocities that people a little older than us have lived through. People who haven't seen the ravages of socialism, individuals who haven't seen the ravages of what has happened in the Middle East for some of these earlier generations. And so I think as you see that generational divide grow a little bit, as you see children who are not the children of baby boomers, but are the children of millennials coming up, or you see that the individuals who the children of Gen Xers, I think that you should start to see kind of this kind of paradise lost or history lost, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you don't remember Gorbachev tear down that wall, you might not remember just how bad things got in places that employed the very policies the Democrats want to bring us back to.
Joseph Pinion joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, as a millennial, how tough is it to be a conservative? How tough is it to be a Republican when many of the millennials are embracing the socialism, something you just touched on briefly. I mean, for most Americans, sir, whether it's here on KIDO Talk Radio or anywhere else, socialism is evil, and you have the young people and even the not so young people saying socialism for everybody.
Well, look, I think that again, socialism has literally never worked in the history of the world, and so I think that you really, anybody that picks up a history book can tell you that this is a doomed pathway that Democrats are trying to take Republicans down. So I mean, think that is the truer issue. That we have to remind people that this is not a new experiment. That you can't throw the word democratic in front of socialism and make it new again. And that if you're an individual who is of the opinion that we have the rise of authoritarian rule around the globe, that the notion that somehow embracing socialism in America is the best way to counter that is ridiculous, because it is socialism itself, which often leads to the type of authoritarian rule that has led to some of the greatest atrocities in the history of humankind.
Republicans.org, Mr. Pinion, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless. All right. We love the God bless. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. We start with a big one today, everybody. Yesterday, as we first told you last week, the House of Representatives was debating not impeachment, that's every day, was debating reparations. That's right, reparations. Now, this used to be an extreme point of view. But now, all of a sudden, we have this on the House floor. Why? Because you had an article by an author in The Atlantic many years ago talking about that reparations have stained America, or non-reparations have stained America, and we need to make America whole again by giving the descendants of slaves money for the atrocities committed against them. Here's our own Jared Halpern on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM.
A House Judiciary Subcommittee heard from a panel of writers, activists, attorneys, and clergy over whether the United States should consider compensation for the descendants of African slaves.
That a nation is both its credits and its debits. That if Thomas Jefferson matters, so does Sally Hemings.
Writer Ta-Nehisi Coates told the panel it's impossible to imagine America without the inheritance of slavery. Another African-American writer, Coleman Hughes, says reparations aren't needed.
We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system.
The legislation would create a commission to study and develop reparation proposals and recommendations. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Now, of course, the media is jumping on this. Everyone else is jumping on this. And if we just can't kind of figure out how in the world can we divide America more and more and more and more, let's revisit the idea of slavery. Let's revisit the idea of reparations. Let's pit black people against white people. It has no impact on our lives today. And yet here you have, this is what the country voted for, the devious little libs, the Democrats, revisiting this tragic event in American history that we fought a civil war over, that we fought a civil rights movement over, that cost millions their lives, and yet we continue to try and divide people by saying, well, the atrocities committed against people many, many years ago still have an impact today. I disagree.
The spectators grew boisterous as a House subcommittee held a hearing today on whether to set up a commission to study paying reparations to the descendants of Americans who were enslaved. It was the first hearing on this issue in a dozen years, and it came on the anniversary of Juneteenth, which commemorates the end of slavery in the U.S. Ed O'Keefe has more on this.
This is a very important hearing. It is historic. It is urgent.
New Jersey Senator and presidential candidate Cory Booker spoke today in favor of paying reparations to the descendants of slaves.
We as a nation must address these persistent inequalities, or we will never fully achieve the strength and the possibility.
But even before this hearing began, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell weighing in and sparking controversy.
I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea. We've, tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We've elected an African-American president.
That touched a nerve. Writer Ta-Nehisi Coates firing back.
For a century after the Civil War, black people were subjected to a relentless campaign of terror.
And who was responsible for that terror? The Democratic Party that cut a deal with the Republicans to get the federal troops out of the South. It was the Democratic Party. We live in a beautiful place. And by the way, congratulations to the indoor Idaho Horsemen. They play at the Ford Idaho Center in Nampa. They just completed the undefeated season at home. They are, going to the playoffs. And the beauty of sports, the beauty of entertainment, really the beauty of everything today, much more diverse. Some would say too diverse. Some would say, the idea that America is racist is absurd. And yet here we have these people going before Congress saying, we need reparations, as if money is going to make the bad part of slavery good. It isn't. Why must we always focus in on the negative? Why must we always have these liberal activists seek to destroy America? Thomas Jefferson, bad. Barack Obama, good. As Mitch McConnell said, as I've said, as others have said, if America was such a bad place and we still had the whatchamacallit of slavery today, the remnants of that, well, would we have elected a black president? Would we have diverse people in entertainment, in sports? No.
A campaign that extended well into the lifetime of Majority Leader McConnell.
Many 2020 Democratic presidential hopefuls now backing some form of reparations. Most Republicans reject the idea of taxpayer-funded reparations.
I just think we're so far removed from the event.
We've, tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We've elected an African-American president.
A new chapter in a growing national debate.
Is it really growing nationally? Is it growing in Idaho? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up, an NFL legend says the Democratic Party owes black Americans an apology. But when we take a look at Congress, is this really what Congress should be focusing in on? Reparations and impeachment? Whatever happened to infrastructure and balancing the budget? Let's roll. Time to wake up and start the day on the right side with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
And when I'm talking for reparations, I'm talking about those left behind, but I'm actually talking to my white brothers and sisters. You need this more than we do. You need this for your soul. You need this to be able to look black persons in the eye and say, I acknowledge the mistake, and I want to be part of the solution to repair that damage.
There we have it. That was an Episcopal priest during the reparations hearing yesterday. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Now, we will take your calls coming up at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And here's Danny Glover. Remember him? Famous actor, all-around great guy, national spokesperson on commercials. This is what he thinks about the reparations.
A national reparations policy is a moral, democratic, and economic imperative.
There we have it. So that's one side of it. Now, former NFL legend Burgess Owens was probably the only voice of sanity yesterday when he talked about the Democratic Party's history with slavery, the Democratic Party's history with Jim Crow laws, the Democratic Party's history in violating civil rights, opposing the civil rights. And here's what he had to say here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to take a different tack from beginning. We are at this point, this is not about black and white, rich and poor, blue collar, white collar. We're fighting for the heart and soul of our nation. We have a very, very special country that started with the Judeo-Christian values that allowed every single generation to become better than the last. And that has not ended, that has not stopped until now. We're telling our kids a little bit something different, that they don't have the opportunities that we had. I'm going to talk about some ideologies. And when I talk about them, I'm not talking about people. People change. I used to be a Democrat until I did my history and found out the misery that party brought to my race. So when I talk about these ideologies don't change, people do. We're fighting for the heart and soul of our nation against socialism, Marxism, and the evil that it has brought to us and the stealing of our history. Karl Marx said it best, the father of socialism, an atheist, anti-Semite, and a blatant racist. Yet we teach his philosophy in our school systems today. He said it, the first battleground is rewriting of our history. You steal our history, you steal our pride in our past, our appreciation for our present, and our vision for our future. And every single urban city in our country is now experiencing that loss. Real quick history, because these are things that we're not taught. I'm blessed to be the great-great-grandfather of Silas Burgess. Came here in the belly of a slave ship. Sold in Charleston, South Carolina with his mother to the Burgess plantation. An evil, evil man that drove my great-great-great-grandmother either to leaving her family, her kids, or committing suicide. I don't know. She disappeared. But Silas at age of eight, was blessed to be surrounded by men who believed in freedom. Even though they were shackled, they escaped. They went the southern route of the Underground Railroad, facilitated by white and Mexican Americans. And he's made his way out south to Texas. He ended up being a successful entrepreneur, owned 102 acres of land, paid off in 2 years. Started the first black church, the first black elementary school. Pillar of his community, 18 kids, Christian, Republican. His first son was Alpha Omega. Proud American. An example of what happens when any race, any culture is given hope, opportunity, and freedom. It didn't end there, by the way. The history of our black country, of our black Americans, has been stolen from us for decades, almost over a century. Booker T. Washington, 1882, began Tuskegee University. By 1905, it was producing more self-made black millionaires than Harvard, Yale, and Princeton combined. The 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was a black community that led our country in the growth of the middle class, led our country in terms of the men committed to marriage, over 70%, now it's 30%. Led our country in terms of the committed to business ownership, 40%, now it's 3.8%. Men matriculated from college. We now have a higher percentage of men incarcerated in college. It is, by the way, my degree was biology. And that I learned a long time ago that slavery is not a gene in the DNA helix. It's our actions, it's our attitude, it's our belief. I do not believe in reparation, because what reparation does, it points to a certain race, a certain color, and it points them as evil, and points the other race, my race, as one that is not only becomes racist, but also beggars. I do believe in restitution. Let's point to the party that was part of slavery, KKK, Jim Crow, that has killed over 40% of our black babies, 20 million of them. State of California, 75% of our black boys cannot pass standard reading and writing tests, a democratic state. So yes, let's pay restoration. Let's pay restitution. How about a Democratic Party pay for all the misery brought to my race? And those, after we learn our history, decide to stay there, they should pay also. They're complicit. And every white American, Republican or Democrat, that feels guilty because of your white skin, you should need to pony up also. That way we can get past this reparation and recognize that this country has given us greatness. Look at this panel. It doesn't matter how we think. fact is, well, it doesn't matter our color. We have become successful in this country like no other because of this great opportunity to live the American dream. Let's not steal that from our kids by telling them they can't do it.
There we have it. NFL owner Burgess Owens on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Here we have the House of Representatives, a committee focusing in on whether or not Americans, whether or not you should pay reparations. Traffic and weather together with Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And the longest day of the year. Thank you very much, Larry Gebert. Kevin Miller in the morning. Coming up, your thoughts on reparations and one city giving licenses, actually one state giving licenses to illegals. And yet you have to jump through hoops for the Star card. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Kevin Miller, we'll try and make sense of it with your feedback next. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget the Boise Music Festival this Saturday. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. And, of course, coming up next month, Girls with Guns, brought to you by Independence Indoor Shooting in Meridian, Idaho. Joining us now, Fox News Radio's Jeff Monosso to take a look at the latest on General Motors. Jeff, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Yeah, exploding Takata airbag inflators have been linked to at least 16 deaths and more than 250 injuries in the U.S. According to the government, at least 24 people have died worldwide. Now, in a petition, General Motors is seeking to avoid the recall of thousands of pickups and SUVs that are part of that massive recall. About 50 million Takata inflators have been recalled in the U.S., making it the largest automotive safety recall in U.S. history. We expect another 20 million airbags and newer cars are expected to be recalled in the coming years. So in a petition to the government, GM is arguing for a fourth straight year that some of its vehicles should be excluded from the recall because the defects, according to GM, are inconsequential to the safety of its pickups and SUVs due to differences in inflator design and vehicle integration. So GM is basically saying that we've deployed thousands of inflators after exposing them to humidity and high temps in extreme conditions without reported rupture. So we request, again, for exemptions for 2010 to 2014 models, Chevy Silverados, GMC Sierras, Chevy Tahoes, Suburbans, Chevy Avalanche, GMC Yukons, and Cadillac Escalades. GM's basically saying that, look, they're different designs, and we've exposed them to the types of conditions that we've seen Takata airbags explode, which is usually hotter temps and more humid climates. And so we'll see if the government, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, allows that. But GM says that it's confident that its testing shows the inflators do not present an unreasonable risk of safety. So GM is kind of that's their stand. We'll see. We've heard from some drivers though that have been pretty upset about it, accusing the company of stalling with what they contend is repeated requests for exemptions. But GM also notes that it's repaired about 1 million of the 1.4 million Takata airbags that had been recalled, according to the government.
We'll continue to monitor that situation, Jeff. Thank you.
You bet.
There we have it, Jeff Monosso. If you missed it last night, the president was on Sean Hannity's program. Remember, Sean Hannity weeknights 3 to 6 right here on KIDO Talk Radio.
Whoever it is, I don't know. I mean, I look at some of them. I don't see George Washington. I don't see Churchill. I don't see anybody in particular that I worry about. I think, honestly, whoever it is. It was like being at a World Championship college football game where the score was tied going into the last minute. It was the entire rally. It was an incredible scene. And outside, there were thousands of people. And, I mean, we were asking people not to show up. We were saying, please don't come, letting the word out, because we had 121,000 people. We're taking down wall and putting up new walls. Some areas you can renovate. But we'll have over 400 miles of wall built by the end of next year, which is very quick. It's rapidly approaching. They've been doing a really good job, and people at the border will tell you that the traffic has really dropped down.
There we have it, the President of the United States with our own Sean Hannity. Let's go to Liberal Steve with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberal Steve.
Good morning, America. Liberal Steve has spoken. So shall it be. Say, Maggie O'Mara was talking about high-profile vehicles in the wind. If I jump in my Volkswagen and drive across Idaho today smoking cannabis, does that make me a high-profile vehicle? Reparations. They've been talking reparations for 20-some years. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen, period. Should be talking about stuff like Iran throwing a missile and knocking out our drone. Should be talking about that cop in Tennessee that had the Baptist minister, had a congregation of 16. He was talking about executing gays, rounding them up and executing them, and he lost his job as a cop. And we should be talking about this. What was it? 85 buses. Busloads of Latinos and everything. They bust into Trump's campaign thing there, his announcement. 75 busloads they had to bust in from the north. Yeah. He's going to win, all right. He's so far gone, it's history. What say you, Mr. Miller? Should I call you Mothman?
All I have to say to you is the president is right and you are wrong, and we will keep America great, and you will continue to be our agitator.
Are you going to have people at Dave and Buster's for the Democratic debates coming up then?
No.
In the fall?
No.
None for the Democratic? Well, that's not doing the yin and yang thing.
I don't think people would show up. And the Democratic debates start next week. Unfortunately, we're busy. We have better things to do Wednesday night.
What if you had some fairy dust sprinkled on you and you became a Democrat?
I've been offered a lot of money to be a lib.
I've been offered a lot of money to be a Republican.
I didn't know this was a competition.
Well, I didn't know it was either, but you brought it up. So what else is happening in America besides Trump? Anything?
Well, apparently you've given your review and commentary of the topics of the morning, so we will move on from you.
Well, wait a minute. Stay fired up, and you know I love you, Miller. You know that.
We love you, Liberal Steve.
I wouldn't say one bad thing about you to anybody. Maybe. Even though they say to me, "Well, how can you be friends with Miller?" I say, "What? He's a human being. He has time to be, changed and forgiveness to happen. So you stay fired up."
Fair enough. Thank you, sir.
Fair enough.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. If you're just waking up, a disturbing story out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Sophisticated. The FBI says Mustafa Al-Awamir first caught the attention of investigators in April on social networks and encrypted messaging apps, expressing interest in jihad and offering to provide information on potential ISIS targets here in Pittsburgh.
A 21-year-old Pittsburgh resident and Syrian refugee is accused of planning an attack on a Christian church on the north side of Pittsburgh, providing resources to ISIS. This is the story of how he became arrested.
The FBI says the suspect thought he was plotting online and in person with ISIS sympathizers, but instead they were undercover with the FBI. They claim he gave the maps targeting the Legacy International Worship Center. Investigators believe the explosives he wanted to hide in a backpack and detonate by remote control would have likely killed many people in the surrounding Northside neighborhood, even if the church was empty. They say he planned on hiding a second bomb, timed to go off just as emergency responders would arrive on scene. The FBI said he had already bought some of those materials to make the bombs as recently as Sunday and Monday. The pastor of the Legacy International Worship Center says it's all overwhelming.
I am grateful that nothing did happen. And I'm grateful that we're able to show that God covered us and protected us, and that people are still alive and people are able to hug their children, loved ones.
There we have it. That story out of Channel 4 in Pittsburgh. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. So here we have a person from another country coming in, young person, young man, trying to blow up a Christian church. More on that in a minute. Hank, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller.
Good morning. I'd like to emphasize that I'll agree with Owens 100%. He knows the history of what went on. The Democrat Party was the history. It was the party of slavery, and it was the party of basically Jim Crow. And what happened? I might point out that black slavery was not exclusively a white problem, even in America. In Virginia, in the early history of Virginia, after several blacks were indentured servants and became free, in the early history of Virginia, right between 1619 and 1700, they became slave owners themselves, owning black slaves in Virginia. I might point out that there were black slave owners in Jamaica. I might point out there were black slave owners owning black slaves in Africa. There were black slave traders who were giving slaves to Arabs, basically Saudi Arabia, and that trade lasted all the way into the 20th century. So, it's not exclusively a white problem. Blacks are involved in it too. And also, I might point out that the biggest racists in Congress was Vardaman, Bill Boa, Tom Heflin of Alabama, who was Hal Heflin's uncle, were the biggest race baiters in the history of both the South and I might include Cottonhead of South Carolina. The Democrat Party has a habit of blaming their sins and then trying to rub it off the Republicans, or even up to this Russian collusion thing when Hillary was the collude. But that's the pattern or the modus vivendi of the Democrat Party. And then let's talk about Mayor Peters' beloved Idaho Democrat Party. We had Burt Miller in 1941, who was our Attorney General, who made a statement that Idaho is white man's country. Let's keep it that way. That was Burt Miller in 1941. So, and how about the father-in-law of one of Idaho's icons, Frank Church? Chase Clark, governor of Idaho, 1941 to 43. The only way I'll accept those yellow-bellied Japs is if they're behind barbed wire. So I can't find an instance in there. There were conservatives like Bob Taft, a Republican, son of the President William Howard Taft, who fought the Democrats in the Ohio legislature back in 1923 to dismask the Ku Klux Klan in Ohio. And the Democrat Party was lined up against him for that. So I get sick and tired of listening to how our history's been distorted, lied to, both in our public schools and our colleges. And anybody who cares to do actual research in the matter finds out the lies that are being fed in our public schools, and we're paying taxpayer money for this crap. So I'll leave it at that.
Hank, thank you for the call. Coming up next, Liberty Linda, more of your thoughts at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The president back on the campaign trail, talking to our own Sean Hannity. You can catch Sean this afternoon at 3, and the House debating reparations.
I don't think any person, black or white, is responsible for what someone else, black or white, did 150 years ago. And I think most Americans feel the same way I do.
There we have it. John Kennedy of Louisiana saying, time to move on.
I just simply ask, why not? And why not now?
More coming up next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Last night, Sean Hannity had our great friend President Trump on, going back and forth about a few issues. One in particular would have to be jobs.
They're coming back from China because of the fact I put the tariffs on. In order not to pay the tariffs, they're coming back into this country.
And the president continued to talk a little bit about trade.
A very, very big deal. And it means hundreds of billions of dollars to our country and thousands of jobs. And it replaces NAFTA, one of the worst trade deals ever made.
Liberty Linda, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. Mr. Burgess Owens was absolutely correct. Can you tell me one person, American person, that we know of that brought others to this country at the beginning of our country? No, because England brought them here to destroy our country. It didn't happen. 95% or more of the American people that lived here in the beginning of our country were religious, loving people that would not hurt anyone. Did they have people as workers? Yes. You know, there may have been a small percent, 2%, that may have been mean, bad people that would have hurt someone.
Well, what do you make of the reparations?
Yes, I am. I'm very upset with this. And today, I think most of the good, wonderful people that are descendants of those who were brought here from Africa, I think it's a blessing to them. They can look around them and see that it's a blessing that they are in this country. You look at the people in Africa, how they're suffering. So I think it's a blessing that they're brought here. But not one American person brought them here. I know I've read absolute proof that they were brought here by England. And, and I'm not saying that there were some people that were harmed, because there are bad people in this world. However, I think at least 95% of the people that lived here at the beginning of our country were religious, loving people and would not hurt anyone. You know, I've heard of stories of individuals and their family have documentation and history about they call them workers, and they took good care of them. They loved one another. And so with what's going on, reparations, I believe that it's a blessing. Most Africans here would say it's a blessing that they are here in this country. That's what I believe.
Well, it's a blessing for everybody in this country. Liberty Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. We love you. Love your show.
Well,
keep up the good work.
We love you.
Okay, you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning on your home for Fox News on the radio. Sean Hannity in the afternoons, followed by Lars Larson. Coming up next, Meridian raises impact fees, number one. Number two, Boise, the city of Boise, proposing tax increases to fund housing and transit for the next fiscal year. Is this the answer to deal with growth? Get your thoughts next. Kevin Miller, waking up on the right side. Good morning.